Pierre Bonnard was born in 1867 in the suburbs of Paris. His father was a civil servant. In 1885, after a brief period at the École des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, he decides to give up the idea of earning his living as a painter and enrolls in the law school at the Sorbonne, intending to paint only in his spare time. Nonetheless, 2 years later, in 1887, he joins the Académie Julian and then applies for admission to the École des Beaux-Arts. The following year, he gains his law degree and begins work in the record office while associating with fellow painters whenever he can. Now, something momentous came from this association. His closest friend in the art world and fellow student, I might add, Paul Serussier, met Paul Gauguin in Brittany. And under Gauguin's direction, he painted a small landscape, and there we have it. It's called the Talisman. And it's, as you can see, it's constructed of flat areas of pure color. And in so doing, Gauguin divorced himself from any representational or impressionist movements. He focused instead on translating his own sensations and vision onto the canvas. He painted what he felt, not what he saw. It was an abstract concept based on capturing emotion, a personal vision. Serussier showed it to Bonnard, among others, at the Academy, and swayed by what they saw as a completely new direction in art, they formed a group known to us now as the Nabis, spelled N-A-B-I-S, which translates the word prophets. So the Nabis were formed, and they were active in Paris from 1888 to 1900, so only 12 years in actual fact. The Nabis movement played a large part in the transition from Impressionism and academic art to abstract art. They were inspired by broad planes of flat color, thicker outlines, and bold patterns characterized by the Japanese prints which were flooding Europe at that time. And they rebelled against easel painting, moving closer to decorative art. So here we have the platform for understanding Bonnard's style. Right. In 1890, Bonnard shared a studio in the Rue Pigalle with Edward Voyard and Maurice Denis. And it was not long before he attracted the attention of Toulouse-Lautrec, mainly because of a bright, lively, bubbly poster he created for the Debray Champagne Company, and there it is. Very eye-catching, as you can see. It was a major breakthrough for Bonnard and gave him clout as a painter. He was just 24 years of age. It was his first commercial work of art for which he was paid 100 francs. What's more, this successful commission helped him to convince his family that he could make a living as an artist rather than a lawyer. Shortly after that, he painted around 50 paintings of his family in dull, somber interiors, reflecting a snug, if unexciting, domestic life. Now, you'll be forgiven if you can't quite pick out the figures in this painting very clearly, because as you'll see from Bonnard's style, the subject matter melds into the background, giving this decorative effect. So there we've got his father. He's quite obviously distinguishable, smoking a pipe. But it took me a while when I first saw this painting to find out, to discover any other people in it. And then it became obvious that this was his mother in this top left-hand corner. And there she is, looks as though she might be smoking a cigarette. And then this pipe here, we are told, is Bonnard's pipe, and that's his hand. And you can just see the smoke coming from the pipe. So the painting is called Intimacy, and like much of Bonnard's work, it's in the Musée d'Orsay. So the two figures are actually his sister, Andre, and her husband, not his wife, not his mother, his sister's Andre. And as I said, it's Bonnard's hand you can see in the foreground there. Then we come to the croquet game, which is a much larger painting and again hangs in the Musée d'Orsay. Bonnard's father is also evident in this painting, and I take it to be this man here on the left in the yellow straw hat. The players merge and re-emerge from their green carpet of grass as though woven out of the same material. The closed-in space gives the impression of an interior, expressing the ideas of the Nabis and stripping art down to the essentials of color, surface, and form. It also has the appearance of a screen. You'll notice that the croquet game is untroubled by perspective. It is essentially decorative. Maurice Denis expressed the Nabis philosophy thus, and I quote, "A picture is basically a flat surface covered with paints, but put together in a certain order." Well, yes, I don't think many people would disagree with that. So there we have the croquet game. So there's a lady here with a croquet mallet about to take a shot. Somebody in the background there in a very evident straw hat. This I take to be a croquet hoop that they have to knock the ball through. I've never played croquet in my life. There's another figure here which is not easy to discern because her dress is muted, but muted colors, and she just seems to be part of the background. But there's another game going on here, or the five figures are dancing. Maybe we don't know what they're doing. It's not clear. But then again, Bonnard wasn't interested in making it particularly clear. He was interested in the decorative aspect of the painting. Bonnard showed 5 paintings in the Salon des Indépendants, of which this was one. Interestingly, he quickly attained a reputation for being the most Japanese of all the French painters at that time. In 1893, he painted Woman Pulling on Her Stocking. It's likely that the model is his future life companion, Marthe, whom he met by chance crossing the Boulevard Haussmann. Her likeness appears in no less than 384 of his paintings, including this one on the same theme, Woman with Black Stockings. We're told she was not an easy woman to live with, apparently very possessive, reclusive, and of frail health. It was said she never actually sat for him. He painted her every time from memory, which probably explains why she never actually aged in any of his paintings. In 1895, he painted this still life, Basket of Fruit on a Tablecloth. It's quite a small painting, as you can see, 12 by 17. Curiously, the tablecloth looks more like a lightly washed brick wall. I'm pausing to allow you to absorb the paintings so that you can get used to his style. In 1895, he painted this still. No, we've done that, haven't we? Right. In 1896, he painted views of Paris. He painted this on boards, actually. It's not strictly a triptych, but it is divided into 3 areas by these thin, wavy green lines. There's one, and then on the right, there's the other one. So you've actually got, it's not all one painting. It's, well, it is all one painting, but you've got a park area here on the right, a street area in the middle, and then this sort of cul-de-sac, narrow cul-de-sac on the left. Quite how, why he painted it like this, we don't know. In the center, as I say, is a bustling, broader street near an intersection. That'd be the intersection up there. With the market barrow, there we are, the market barrow, selling, I would say, flowers by the looks of it. And there are several carriages, horse-drawn carriages about, and a lot of pedestrians, as you can see. There's a lot of movement in the center part of the painting. He's creating a swirling effect to make it a busy scene. On the right is a view of families in one of the city's parks. So hence we've got an emphasis on very pale green and blue. In fact, the overriding tone of the painting is very, very light blue, I think. In this year, he had his first one-man show with 56 paintings, which elicited this very dismissive comment from Pissarro, and I quote, "One more symbolist who is a total failure." So the Impressionists were not impressed. Now we've got 3 grandmother paintings to look at now. This is Grandmother and Child, painted in 1894. This is Bonnard's maternal grandmother. And as you can see, very decorative again, with the outlines are very vague and broken. I think we would recognize the grandmother, as you will see. She's got a very distinctive nose. And the child is sitting at the table playing with a toy. That's a very small painting, only 13 by 17. So Granny and Child are seen again in this painting called The Meal. Granny is this time on the right of the painting, and the child just about large enough to get his or her hands onto the table. I'm not sure what the gender of the child is. It's basically a still life, as you can see, and the tablecloth, the white tablecloth, which is a motif he uses again and again, predominates this painting, so that the various items on the table stand out. Again, there's no attempt at creating any sort of perspective with shadow. There are no shadows anywhere to be seen. But we've got fruit there, which look like pears to me. I'll leave you to decide. And we've got a carrot there with a very thin neck. And then again, the background is basically rectangles of color in browns and light ochres and burnt siennas, with these 2 could be bell pulls, I'm not sure what they are, or the curtains with the pinks and whites. again, another small painting, 13 by 15. And then this is the third granny painting, as I call them. This is called Pears, or it's also called Lunch at Le Grand Lep, which is where the grandparents lived. And slightly bigger painting this time, and the child, in this case, the grandchild is a lot older, a young girl, as you can see. She's leaning over the table, and the table is the tablecloth is not quite so white as in the previous instances. And Granny is about to partake of a cup of tea. We're going to see this Caraford red wine again later on. But it's a general mishmash of various items on the table. It's difficult to discern what exactly they are because of the way he paints them. As we can see, the chandelier or the light, not exactly a chandelier, I wouldn't think, but anyway, it looks like it almost painted it like a spider. Man and woman, he painted at the turn of the century. The figures are, of course, Bonnard and Marthe, who's seen on the left here, playing with her cats. I just leave you to focus on that a little bit because the outlines are so indistinct, it's difficult to pick out exactly the details of some of Bonnard's paintings. But anyway, he's got this curious long structure of wood, which we're not quite sure what it is. It could be a screen or a scene at the side, maybe. Anyway, he's divided the painting in two, and Marthe is sitting on the bed playing with her cat. We can just make out the cat there, I think. And the light, she's monopolizing all the light in the painting, as you can see. It's making her skin yellow rather than flesh tones. And Bonnard himself on the left appears, it's thought that he might be looking into a mirror and he might be painting himself, his image in the mirror. That's the general opinion of this painting. Intimacy and detachment are established by this long vertical in the middle. He uses this motif of strong verticals to dominate his paintings, often, as you'll see later on. Marthe, incidentally, rarely looks out of Bonnard's paintings. She's absorbed with playing with the cat in this one. And the position of his hands, as I say, suggests he might be drawing himself in the bathroom mirror, or in a mirror anyway. And this painting heralded a number of major nude paintings. This one is called Indolence, or Indolence, as the French would say, I suppose. I think you can use the word in both languages. And this painting has been compared to Manet's Olympia, in that it appears to have been painted for private consumption. The great slab of bed makes this an image of profound repose, according to the poet Mallarmé, or one of a drowsy awakening. And usually the woman looks out at the viewer, who appears to be standing at the foot of the bed. And the scene is lit by artificial light, which turns the white sheet yellow. Again, the very indistinct outlines of Marthe lying on the bed there. She's shielding her breasts, but she's quite happy to expose the rest of her body. The other great nude on a bed painted in this period is Siesta. Again, this is Marthe again. Marthe spelled incidentally Marthe, so it might be pronounced Marthe, but I'm putting a little bit of emphasis on the E to make it clear who I'm talking about. So this time Marthe is caught less provocatively on her stomach, but again in a moment of private intimacy. Notice the various decorative motifs in the background there. Not one sweep of one particular pattern wallpaper, but several, as you can see. Totally inauthentic, because who would wallpaper their walls like that? And then the mattress is an interesting color, a sort of dark violet or pink, you might say. We got the dog. There's a lot of dogs. Bonnard paints a lot of dogs. He's obviously very fond of dogs. And so we got the dog fast asleep here, right at the bottom of the painting, and he's almost, or she is almost indiscernible from these clothes that have been haphazardly thrown onto the floor, and they resemble rock formations to me. And then we got a still life here on the table, the bedside table of we don't know what. Impossible to say. The realism of these nudes is frank, to say the least, and foreign to other French paintings of the fin de siècle. Their gritty realism is close to the work of Munch. In 1907, Bonnard painted Faun, or the Rape of the Nymph. I'll just let you look at that for a moment. I haven't got much to say about it, except that it's a divergence, obviously, from his domestic scenes that he likes to paint. The bathroom mirror, you can find this in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, if you dare to go there at the moment. There's more definition here, and a subtle, soft blue and violet tone predominates, as you can see. In case you're wondering how this works, this is actually a mirror, and so you're seeing Marthe, the rear of Marthe, reflected in the mirror, and somebody is again imbibing a cup of tea. So the mirror is on the wall over this washstand. And of course, her flesh tones are attracting these lilac or violet colors as a reflection. And on the extreme right here appears to be a curtain across a window, so that is letting the light into the room. This one is called the bathroom. We're still in the bathroom. Marthe again, of course, and again looking away from the viewer, probably applying eau de cologne after a bath in a tub. And there's the tub. And there's, again, a total disregard for perspective. By now, you must be getting used to that, I imagine. She stands silhouetted against the window light, though she is attracting some light. The light is general, really. Obviously, it's coming through the window, but it seems to be illuminating pretty well everywhere in this painting. And again, we see the same mirror that we saw in the previous one, with the wash basin and the jug and water in the wash basin. And there she is in the extreme right of the mirror, just suggested there. And this chair, of course, we don't see that in the room because presumably it's down in this area here. And curiously, the curtain is somehow managed to drape itself over this washstand. So I'm not quite sure how that would have happened, but I don't think Bonnard is interested too much in the details of this painting. The curves of her body are echoed in other rounded forms receding in the picture. So we've got the tub, the basin, the chair, and these carry the eye back to the nude in the painting. So we've got a sort of route. The eye takes this sort of route. That's the theory anyway. Whether in fact it does do that, I don't know. It would have worked better if the reflection was painted with a suggestion of the flesh colors of Marthe as she stands there facing the window. The following year, Bonnard produced Nude in the Light. This clearly is not Marthe, but a professional model. The painting was bought by his friend, Maurice Denis. So there we've got various items of clothing or towels or whatever hanging either framing the nude's head. In effect, she seems to be absorbed in something she's doing with her hands. It's unclear what, and it doesn't matter what. And then we've got a delicate little bit of ribbon over the chair there again, which is painted without the slightest regard for perspective. Away from nudes for the moment, we have a larger dining room in the country. Now, this setting is a house at Varennes in the Seine Valley, which Bonnard has brought the year before. He showed this painting at the Salon d'Automne in 1913. It's thought to be the most ambitious painting he had attempted for years, again demonstrating the decorative technique implicit in his Nabis paintings. So actually, it reminds me of the Fauve paintings. The colors are so vibrant and sharp in this painting. We got this figure in the window with her arm resting on the sill, looking through. We got a cat sitting on the chair there, so presumably that's what's caught her attention. And the tablecloth in this instance is a very, very pale blue and reflected in the door there. The figure is slightly hunched. It could be Marthe, we don't know. It's possible to say. This painting is called Coffee, painted in 1915. And you'll find this painting, as you can see in the Tate. A woman dressed in yellow sits at the far side of the table, sipping a cup of tea and turning towards a small dog who stands at the edge of the chair with two paws on the table. The torso and arm of a second woman dressed in blues and greens is seen reaching down. There we are, reaching down towards the glass on the table. And it's not clear whether she's just about to sit down or that she's just got up. The composition is framed on the right by a yellow, red, and blue decorative border. There we are, running down the side of the painting. He's very, very fond of these vertical stripes and vertical rectangles he interposes in the painting. And of course, the yellow is picked up in not only in her clothes, but also on the extreme left as well. And the palette for this painting is restricted to reds, yellows and blues, whites and browns, as you can see, while the dark serving platter contrasts heavily with the rest of the picture. So there we are, a dark painted in Prussian blue and browns and maybe even a hint of black there as well. And it contrasts very strikingly with the vibrant gingham tablecloth, which absolutely dominates the painting. So this again reminds me of the Fauvre paintings of Matisse and de Chirico, in so much as the colors are absolutely dominant and very, very bright. And again, he's painted an atmosphere of quiet domesticity. And the dog is being extremely well behaved, as you can see. I'm not quite sure I would allow a dog to have its paws on the table, but there we are. It looks as though it could be a dachshund, some sort of dachshund. Back to the nudes, the spring, this is called, or nude in the bath, which is more obviously a title for it. Bonnard had no difficulty in transferring the gestures and poses of classical sculptures to many of his nudes, but making them look natural. Now, this is Marthe again, quite clearly. She's in an awkward, he's painted her in a rather awkward position in the bath, again, without the slightest regard for perspective, and she appears to be running her hand through water from the taps, but there's no detail there. He's just painted the splash, really. And the colors of her flesh are reflected in the wall at the back there on the extreme left. Some very nice, what I think of a very attractive violets and blues in the texture of the bath, but no strong outline, and the bath is just suggested really with rather thin down paint, I would say. He tends to use thin down paint quite a lot. Most faces are blurred and ill-defined, as you've seen. Painting heads against a strong light is an effective way of disguising the features of a model. As with several of his canvases, he requires us to view at an angle rather than from directly in front. By moving to the right of the picture and looking at the composition on the diagonal, we perceive the nude as round and solid, rather like a sculpture. So this is one where Marthe is actually looking out of the picture straight at the viewer. That's the impression I get. She ought to be looking at the water coming out of the tap, really, but to me, she's looking straight at me, really, and straight at you too. The Bowl of Milk, painted in 1919. This is a rather larger painting, 4 foot by 4 foot, but basically. You'll find this in the Tate. The setting is a dining room in a house at Antibes, rented by Bonnard at the time. Light pours through the balcony window and leaves many details in shadow. So we've got some shadowed areas, but it's an excuse for, I think, for painting different tones, dark tones. We've got a cat this time here rather than a dog, and she's just about to put the bowl of milk down for the cat, who's making a beeline for it. Curiously, this balustrade, and you can see through the window where the light is coming through these 3 apertures here. He's painted those rather dark darker than the rest of the outside, and it gives the impression of those are solid objects rather than apertures where light is passing through. Preparatory drawings show Bonnard tested a variety of details and poses for this painting before he brought them together. It was exhibited at the Salon des Indépendants in 1920, and it was sold there. This is standing nude, 4 foot by just under 2 foot. And again, we've got this strong rectangular, well, vertical emphasis in this painting. She seems to be reaching for something the other side of whatever this is. It could be a wall, it could be a screen. It's not clear what it is at all, really. But it's as though Bonnard wants an excuse for painting a very strong vertical area. And curiously as well with this painting, the light isn't very consistent. The light is certainly coming through the window, as we can see, that's bright. But it somehow managed to go around a corner and illuminate the entire length of her body. It has just caught her corner, the corner of her shoulder there, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in that respect. Now then, Vigil. Marthe again, but clothed for a change, as you can see. And there's the dog again, but you have to look very hard to discern the dog from the rest of the background, because the dog is painted in exactly the same reds and oranges that most of the painting is painted in, apart from the yellow chair and the table top that we've seen from above, and whatever this is up here in the top corner. So this really is a mishmash of reds and oranges, attempting a decorative style. Whether this is successful or not, I'm not entirely sure. The mood of the painting is one of deep reverie and emptiness, despite the spectacular clash of the reds and golds. I'm not quite sure I would call them golds, but yellows, certainly, strong yellows. The open window, painted in 1921. The model this time is René Montchatti, whom he met in 1918. They became lovers. Remember that Bonnard and Marthe are not actually married at this point, living together, but not married. There's the René Montchatti resting. This was a very short-lived love affair between the two of them. They were lovers, we're told. This was painted in 1922, and in 1924, she committed suicide. Bonnard spent several weeks in Rome with Montchatti, which couldn't have impressed Marthe very much, I wouldn't have thought. She modeled for him on several occasions, and strangely, or perhaps not strangely, depending on your point of view, within almost immediately after she had committed suicide, Bonnard and Marthe actually married. He does not inform his family, however, whether this was a consequence of the affair with Montchatti is, of course, open to conjecture. We don't know. In 1922, Bonnard fell ill with pneumonia and gave up photography, which had occupied him for some time. So here are three examples demonstrating his eye for composition. And obviously they're all of Marthe. And here on this, in this one towards the bottom, we get a good indication of exactly what she looked like, which we don't get from any of his paintings. So that is what actually Marthe looked like. This is called Still Life with Cat. I'll leave you for a minute to see if you can see the cat. And there's the cat, obviously looking very longingly at the fruit. I'm not sure cats like fruit, do they? Anyway. So we've got a nice bowl of fruit there. It's a still life. And presumably plums and lemons maybe, and I'm not quite sure what the green would be. The carafe here is painted with streaks of light color, as you can see, which is a curious way of painting it, but again going for the decorative style. I'm not interested in painting things as they are, as they're seen, but what he feels about them, and this is how he feels about this carafe of wine. We can't tell whether it's empty or not. And there's a bottle on a cropped bottle on the extreme right there, sort of frames the painting. A lot of white tablecloth down the bottom here. The bath. The image of a woman, Marthe again, lying in the bath was to occupy Bonnard for the next 20 years. Though Marthe by now would have been in her mid-50s, he continues to paint her from memory as a young woman. Bonnard would almost certainly have tacked his canvas to a wall to paint it. He often did that with his canvases. It said the wall of the white enamel running the length of the painting with its gentle modulated tones evokes the limitlessness of the sky and beyond. Well, I'll leave that thought with you. But this is the emphasis on this is these horizontal lines, and it's what I would call a very stretched out painting. So we often talk about stretching out in the bath, don't we? And I think this is what Bonnard is probably aiming for. The feeling of taking your repose and stretching out in the bath, which we all like to do from time to time. These tiles at the top of the painting are quite curious. It's hard to see what they might look like in real life, or whether he's just painted them because he wants them there. And they do, of course, take the eye right to the bottom of the painting there. There's some similar yellows, strong yellows and ochres at the very bottom, and violets again, strong violets there, and at the top subtle violets. And Marthe is languishing in a blue bath, and you can make out Marthe's features there. It's clearly Marthe in this bath. We're getting used to what she looked like now. This one is called The Table. The Tate bought this straight from Bonnard's studio using the Courtauld Fund. According to Tate Modern, Marthe is looking towards a dog whose muzzle is faintly visible on the left. So there's Marthe, and the dog is just about there. She's obviously going to feed the dog. It's not very clear. The dog's not very clear. It's not even sure if the dog is tucking his nose under her arm there. It's quite indistinct, really. She appears about to feed it. She's got a bowl there, and she's doing something with a utensil in the bowl. The whiteness of the tablecloth dazzles, enlivening the space between the plates and the dishes. So we know this is a favorite motif of Bonnard, these white tablecloths with the various meal items haphazardly scattered about. And apart from obviously a basket of fruit there, and a plate over there, maybe it's difficult to work out what these items are. But far more interesting is the background, I think, with these dark burnt siennas and burnt umbers in the door, and the blue mixed into it, and then we've got this yellow at the top there, which contrasts heavily. And then we've got this piece of furniture here, basically painted in oranges and browns. And then on the extreme right, we've got a streak of yellow there. So these are quite subtle tones. This I take to be a door, but and that a piece of furniture, a settle maybe. But as to the rest, I don't know. And again, yet again, at the risk of repeating myself ad nauseum, no perspective, no thought of perspective whatsoever in this painting. Now, this is the sewing lesson. I think it's self-explanatory. I don't need to say much about this painting, so I'll just let you look at it. By now, you realize that Bonnard is very fond of orange, reds and oranges and yellows. Back to a nude again. Nude with green slipper. And doesn't that green of the slipper stand out in this painting? You can't mistake that at all. The setting is the bathroom at Le Bosquet, a house at Le Canet, to which Bonnard and Marthe moved in 1927. As I say, the strong green of the slipper contrasts with the warm pastel colors and glaring red of her flesh. Not quite sure what she's attempting to do. She's got her foot rested on a stool there, as you can see, but quite what her hands are doing, I don't know. She might be rubbing something into her leg, actually. I suspect. Perhaps she's got some ointment or something in the other hand. Certainly the green slipper is in stark contrast to the rest of the painting and isn't mirrored anywhere else, really. This is called Standing Nude, shown at the Salon d'Automne in 1928 and bought shortly afterwards, we're told. Marthe is seen statuesque in oranges, ochres and yellows again, complemented by soft blue and pink tiles in the background. This is the Café au Petit Pousset. Now, this is another triptych, or appears to be a triptych. We got this strong vertical line here and another one there. and this painting is unsigned, by the way. It was commissioned by his friend Georges Bezon. Bonnard called it un décoration, and we're told it's a complex composition in which real space and mirrored space are placed side by side. So I take this to be a mirror, rather in the way Manet's famous painting of the Folies Bergère was used as a mirror. So all these figures are behind the artist. He's caught them in a mirror. And then on the left here, I take this to be outside, maybe a boulevard tables and chairs with three figures there. So the figures are rather indistinct in the mirror. This lady here sitting there is basically just two areas of color. The waiter on the extreme right is more obvious, but the man he's serving, you've got to look hard to see him, and there he is sitting in a chair. And I think this is another man here. You can just see his hat, and he seems to be leaning towards this woman, but he's painted in such subtle shades of yellows, pale yellows and whites, that you've got to look really hard to see him. And then we've got these tables and chairs in the middle there. And the more you look at this painting, the more you are able to pick out figures. There's another figure there and another figure there. Whether he or she, it looks like a woman, he or she is coming and going, we don't know. An interesting painting. The cafe actually is in the Place de Clichy. He told a friend, I am making every effort to try out something new with this painting. In 1930, art movements had moved on, leaving Bonnard behind, but he continued to swim against the tide, unaffiliated to any new avant-garde style of painting. Bonnard was always Bonnard, though his style does have much in common with his lifelong friend Vuillard. This one is called Dining Room Overlooking the Garden. The setting is the dining room of the Villa Castelmar, a house Bonnard rented for a short time. It's situated west of Bordeaux and close to a sanatorium. Not by coincidence either. They found themselves there because of Marthe's frail health. The window gives onto the front garden at the villa, the balustrade cutting right across the center of the painting. This is another canvas that we are told was tacked to a wall in order for Bonnard to paint it. It's quite a large painting as well, over 5 foot by nearly 4 foot. We got a character figure on the extreme left here with a cup of tea. I think Bonnard seems to like putting cups of teas in people's hands. But again, she's difficult to pick out from the rest of the decoration or the patterning of this of the wallpaper. And again, we've got the table with the white tablecloth, although this time it seems to be subtly striped with very, very, very pale lilacs. We're getting used to Bonnard's tables and whatever's on them. Back to the bath theme again. The large bath, this is called. This is nearly 3 foot by 5 foot. Bonnard worked on this painting over a number of years. Many of its surfaces suggest unglazed pottery or rough plaster, especially at the top of the painting. in these thick, chalky patches. He certainly wasn't interested in painting any of his baths enamel white, as you would expect, maybe. He was an excuse for an area to paint in very subtle pastel shades, capturing the reflection, the light reflected from the walls, maybe. We've got the yellow there, and that's picking up on the yellow there. And the strange floor. It's almost not, I wouldn't say it suggested pointillist, but obviously made up of little dabs of blues and yellows. And Marthe, in this instance, again painted in oranges and browns, but the light is catching her feet this time, so we've got to assume the light is behind her somewhere. On the same theme, nude in the bath and small dog, painted in 1941. Well, painted between 1941 and 46, actually. So he took the entire length of almost the entire length of the Second World War to paint this. Bonnard stayed in Paris during the Second World War. Very curious tiled wall there, and the bath this time is he's interested in painting it mainly in blues, as you can see, and the little dog is sitting on the mat at the bath mat at the bottom of the painting, and painted very dark this time. Up till now, we've seen the dog pretty well painted in oranges and browns, but he's made the dog stand out from this painting for whatever reason. This is a panoramic view of Le Cannet, painted in 1941. This is where they were living at the time. We don't see many landscapes from Bonnard, but when we do, it's painted in exactly the same style that he's used all through his life. The buildings are suggested with little dabs of reds and violets and yellows, suggesting the roofs anyway. This is still life with a bottle of red wine. I did say we would see the red wine again. And again, the tablecloth, the white tablecloth, or very light colored tablecloth. It contrasts heavily with this rich red at the top there. Not quite sure what the geography of this table is, what that is, whether that's an extra mat or a tablecloth, or I don't know. But the top of the painting is all reds and dark reds, Venetian reds, and then at the bottom of the painting we get the yellows again that he's so fond of. You can just see his signature there, by the way. His signature was always quite small. Well, we are coming to the end of Bonnard's life now. This was the year of 1942, and this was the year in which Marthe died. She had become more and more reclusive in her later years, timid and suspicious of Bonnard's friends. Bonnard himself commented in the early 30s, "For quite some time now, I have been living a very secluded life as Marthe has become increasingly antisocial." I just want to show you now, before we conclude, 3 self-portraits. I've grouped them all together there as Bonnard ages, obviously from right to left, from left to right, sorry. And he almost looks skeletal there at the bottom. This still life is peaches and grapes on a tablecloth, painted in 1943, towards the end of the Second World War. The reds of this painting are quite outstanding, aren't they? Very vibrant reds at the top, particularly. But again, we have to say, suffused with orange. You can't get away from orange, it seems. And then the last painting I'm going to show you is Almond Tree in Blossom, painted in 1947, when he was close to death. This is in the Louvre. He instructed his nephew, we're told, to change the color of the grass in the left foreground there from green to yellow for some reason. Obviously, it appealed to him. We don't see too many trees painted by Bonnard, but there is one. And I think we would say that's typical Bonnard style by now. And there we see a photograph of Bonnard at the end of his life with his trusted dog that he painted over and over again in various canvases. Bonnard said that, quote, he sought to show what one sees when one enters a room all of a sudden, which might explain why he denied us outline definition, as though we are catching sight of his subjects in the periphery of our vision. Towards the end of his life, Bonnard told a fellow painter, "There was a time when, under pressure from my dealers, I let them have canvases that I ought to have kept, either to do more work on or to forget about and return to later. That is why a number of them, at least half, need further work, or they should have been destroyed." And there are many stories about Bonnard retouching his paintings already sold and hung in galleries and museums, by getting his friends to distract the curators and guards in various rooms while he worked on them discreetly from a small paint box. It took years to complete some canvases, as we've seen, and I can't avoid the comment that perhaps only his death rendered some of them finished at all.